Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here at Earth and Sky. Those of you joining online, we are so grateful for your views, your likes, your loves. Whenever you share our videos, it really warms my heart, makes us happy, and helps me to know that we want to continue on doing this. And so we're really grateful. It's always fun when we see the numbers rising on our channel.
Views going up.
Thank you so much for subscribing. Today we're going to get into something that's a little fun to talk about, a little deep to talk about.
Mystical.
Soul retrieval.
Soul retrieval.
Soul loss and soul retrieval.
You too can lose a soul piece.
You can, yes. And most people, it sounded a little like Dracula there for a second.
Thanks.
I didn't mean that. But you can lose a soul piece. And truly it's a serious thing, though. It is something that's important to do with healing, to recover those lost parts of your soul. There's so many reasons that we lose parts of our soul at different points, and really when we experience soul loss, it's actually a good thing. Sometimes people fear it or they feel like, oh, that's bad, but it's a good thing. It's a way that our soul is able to continue to go on and grow after trauma, because when something very traumatic happens, a little part of our soul leaving is a way that we can deal with the trauma better. It's a way that that soul often takes some of the pain of the trauma. It will often take some of the memories of the trauma.
So like if something bad happens to your lung or something, then they go in and they take it out so that you can still function.
Yeah.
So they're taking it, but it's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I just think less is bad. I mean, right? I mean, you have less soul, that would be bad. But I can see if so. It's
something
basically
was
something
damaged and traumatic.
Then it leaves because of the trauma. That trauma part goes away, so that the rest of you is okay.
And that becomes how we are able to survive the pain of the soul loss.
Okay, all right. So, and it pulls the pain with it.
Or how we survive the pain of the trauma.
The
soul loss helps us survive the pain.
of the trauma, right.
Exactly.
And so it takes, in theory, some of the pain with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the lost soul piece will usually be waiting in a different place for somebody to retrieve it. They rarely come back on their own, but they're waiting for someone to retrieve it after the trauma has gone. Pieces can also sometimes be either lost, where they're just kind of wondering, they're not sure what's going on. Sometimes the pieces are stuck in the pain still, or they're really afraid, and they're afraid to come back. They're afraid to kind of look back out.
So if you had a really bad emotional trauma, the piece itself would be the fear, so the piece would be afraid.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Exactly. So it's staying in that energy. It helps to pull some of that fear away from you so you can survive it.
Gotcha.
And
so in theory, like when people get so afraid they can't handle it, some situation happens and you're so afraid all the time and you just can't get over that fear, if you actually had lost the soul piece, in theory you wouldn't be that afraid anymore. Because it would have helped you by leaving.
Right, exactly.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And sometimes people will still be in fear, but the soul piece might have taken a lot of it away.
Okay.
But your contract hasn't been rewritten and you're still feeling the fear. We'll get to that in a minute, though.
Okay.
Sometimes soul pieces can even be stolen. So they can be lost, stolen, where they're with another soul somewhere.
That's where the vampires come in.
Not exactly.
Oh, okay. Soul vampires. I mean, that's what I thought we were going with this.
I guess I could see it, but no, not really. So there's different reasons why it can be stolen. One of the more common ways that they're stolen is if somebody feels like they love someone so much, and sometimes they'll just want to hold a piece of them. Maybe there's somebody that they admire so much, and they're like, man, I wish I could just have a part of them in me. And they can inadvertently steal a piece of their soul and have it within them.
So you literally can love someone so much that you take part of their soul with you.
Yeah, which is not a good thing, of course. And so it's important to learn that balance of loving, letting go, finding that healthy balance with it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, wow. So it can happen inadvertently.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. People don't usually mean to do that.
Oh, okay. Wow, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. In shamanic cultures, every time there's any type of a deep trauma or something intensely
happens.
traumatic that happens,
Okay.
they always do a soul retrieval about 3 days after the trauma, because they know that whatever traumatic event happened, there was very likely some soul loss that happened. So whether it's somebody that they love that died, or if it was a car accident, or if somebody had a severe injury or anything like that.
Whatever they needed, okay.
Yeah, they do the soul loss about 3 days later to help make sure the soul stays whole and intact.
Nice, interesting.
Soul loss can happen from things that happen within this life or from past lives.
Okay.
It can be both of those. So if you have a trauma in this life, like a car accident, let's say you had a really bad car
Okay,
accident,
right.
and then you
Which I have.
Yeah, and then maybe you were in the hospital, or there was
Oh,
just a
no,
lot
I
of
was
trauma.
never.
And even if you weren't,
Okay, but yeah,
there can
but-
be a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
The financial situation.
Well,
if you're,
just the fear and the.
if you're a teenager, the fear of telling your parents,
Yeah,
the
that's it,
repercussions
yeah.
that come
Well,
from
and
that.
it was my car, man. I love that car. And
Exactly.
it destroyed. It was
And
so
you might have
bad.
left a little piece of it in the car. Well, we did a soul retrieval on you once.
Oh, and it had to do with the car.
That's right.
That's
I forgot
right.
about
I
that.
forgot about that. That's
And
right.
that-
was the only one that I ever did, actually.
Yeah,
It had
and
to do
that
with the
led
car.
back to an interesting thing that had nothing to do with the car. The lesson that it brought back had to do more with finances and your attitude towards money. So it wasn't
The
even
little
about
bill,
the
yeah,
car
yeah, yeah.
as much. It
Yeah.
was really interesting.
It was an interesting,
The soul
way
pieces.
it loops, it's very,
Yeah,
yeah,
the soul pieces can bring back these amazing gifts and
Yeah.
talents that had nothing to do with the initial
I think there was a
trauma
second
sometimes.
piece.
Okay.
I think there might have been 2 pieces.
Oh, that's right.
I
Yeah,
think there was 2
because we were
pieces.
doing something
It
else.
was
and
at
we
the
found
same
soul piece
time,
in
yeah,
there.
but it was a different thing, yeah.
That's right.
No, that's the one that had to do with the weird, every vehicle I've ever owned has like you turn on the fans tick. They all tick. Ding, 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 ding. All of them. And it's followed me, and nobody else I know, they go, those fans don't ever tick. And I'm like, all of my fans tick. And it turned out it had to do with the car accident, and it followed me through. So anyway, it's
Yeah,
complicated,
and
but
then
it was
we
interesting.
wrote the
Yeah.
soul contract within
And
that.
now the next vehicle we got, actually now we've got 2 vehicles, neither one of them had the issue.
It's fantastic.
So it's kind of interesting. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing the way
It
can
is,
work.
it
And it
is.
can work with little issues or big issues.
Right,
You
right,
know,
yeah.
in a lot of different
Mine was
ways.
a little one.
and
I only have little problems. you know,
and then
so.
it brought back into the main thing that you
And there was the big
and
problem.
it's helped
yeah.
fix that in a huge way
Yep.
since then
Yep.
too.
So, okay.
Anyway.
Anyway,
So soul
Enough about
loss
me.
can happen from this life or from past lives. I did one earlier this week actually that was a soul piece relating to a past life in 1200 BC. So a very
So,
long time
okay,
ago,
so-
about 2200 years ago,
so
3200 years ago.
so the soul trauma could have happened in a past life,
Mm-hmm.
and it follows you to this life?
It does.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, because your soul, who you are, transitions. You know, if you subscribe to the belief of past lives,
Right.
it transitions through all of these different lives, but you're still who you are. There's
Right.
aspects we talk in Reiki about both the spirit and the soul. And the soul is the part of you that's the repository of all of your experiences. All of your
okay.
likes, your relationships, all of those
Stuff that
different
you've
things.
learned and gone through and seen and known and
Exactly.
whatever. Okay, yeah.
Those things are in the soul. The spirit is that part of you that's connected to the divine, to that divine love, to the God energy, to the cosmos, and brings this like just a pure balance.
And
love
the universal
energy.
all kind of a thing.
So all of those
Yeah,
combined,
okay.
both of those combined together into what is animatedly our experience.
Our meat bag that we live in.
And so, but the soul is this repository, depending on how long you've been around as a soul, you know,
Yeah.
a primal
this
part of your
current-
soul.
The current soul, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm still trying to, so in the past life, something happens to you, and that, I'm still trying to figure out, how does that follow you to the now? So what happens, what kind of trauma would cause that, like, why would
Yeah,
trauma
well, maybe what would
cause
the
that?
symptoms be?
Yeah,
Which ones are the symptoms?
yeah.
So oftentimes, soul loss will result in symptoms that are different illnesses. So if you have, like for
Okay.
myself, that sensitivity, strong sensitivity to the sun, I guess we are coming back to vampires.
I knew
But
it.
that strong sensitivity to the sun very likely was because of something within a past life.
Oh,
That
interesting. That
it was a
happens.
past life where I was in the desert and I had died in the desert, and it was just a
You were like,
long.
I never want
it was a
to. I never
horrible
want to deal with the sun
incident.
again. I will
Yeah.
never deal with the sun again.
Exactly. Could have been. We'll get into that with the context.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, okay.
So there's a myriad of any type of illness. Not all illnesses mean there's soul loss, but there are a lot of illnesses that if you have it, could be because of soul loss that you have that illness. That
Okay.
vacancy within your soul is allowing that illness to come in that relates to whatever the lesson is that came from the soul piece loss.
Because there's a hole in the soul, it changes your genetics, basically, and your
Yeah.
genetics is what dictates, of course, how healthy or not healthy you are.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
It can
Interesting.
also, soul loss can also result in a feeling of just being scattered or
Okay.
feeling like you're not yourself. Sometimes people will have that feeling of like, I just don't feel whole, I feel like something's missing, I don't know what it is.
I'm always not quite stable.
Yeah, something's not
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
something's
yeah.
missing, what do I need to fill
Ground.
in?
I need to be more grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not just a need of being grounded. Sometimes you're missing that soul piece, or that
Mhm.
soul piece might be calling out to you. You might have felt like you were whole and you didn't necessarily go through a specific trauma, but then you start getting that emptiness feeling, that feeling like something's missing, and it's that soul piece kind of,
Saying,
your soul's
"Come get
recognizing
me,
that
come
it's
get me."
calling to you. Yeah.
Ah.
So that void is being created so you can have the room to bring that soul
So
piece
you
in.
recognize the void because it's ready to be filled.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's sometimes the case.
So like, so in theory, like someone they could have evolved or gone to the point of as they're getting stronger in themselves, then they reach a point where the soul piece goes, hey, I want to come back now?
Mhm.
And okay, interesting.
And sometimes we use that example of fear in the beginning, but sometimes fear can also be a symptom. It might be that there was a situation where fear was involved and the soul piece took a lot of the fear from the trauma with it, but then enough time goes on and that fear hasn't been healed in you and the soul piece hasn't been retrieved and hasn't healed, and so the fear starts to come back up. Maybe there was a situation that you were in that was traumatic and then you felt like you dealt with it, the soul piece fled, and then it just starts kind of creeping up over time back in you, and the fear increases.
So it festers.
Exactly.
All right, interesting.
And so that's needing to
It's a
heal
wound,
the soul
it's a
piece.
wound that festers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Depression, same thing. Often depression can be happen after there's soul loss too.
Okay, all right.
And several other symptoms.
Yeah,
It
of
kind of
course.
gives you the gist
Well,
of it.
pretty much so, but I mean, in theory, most things in theory could be a symptom.
Could be, yeah.
I mean, just about. Emotional, physical, pretty much anything could be a symptom
Yeah.
of, just depending.
Exactly.
It may not
Absolutely.
be, it may not be a symptom of a soul
Right.
lost soul piece, but
But
it
it
could
might
be.
be.
Okay.
Exactly. And sometimes soul loss ends up taking the memories with it. We already talked about
Yeah.
that a little bit. I see that so often with trauma. It's a way to really help that primary or primal soul to be able to survive. I think this is the case very frequently with child sexual assault, because oftentimes those memories will be taken away as the child starts to develop, because it was so hard and so harsh to deal with that the mind is able to block it off, but it blocks it off because of the soul piece
being
that
just going
leaves
away.
and just departs with it.
Yeah.
And so those memories will come back in little flashes sometimes, and it takes a while sometimes for an adult to put the pieces back together to be able to even start the healing process. And the healing process can be accelerated so much by doing a soul retrieval, where you heal that original wound and you bring the primal soul back into being more complete and more whole.
So in the process of bringing it back, it gets healed first, so
Yes.
that you don't have to, you're not going out and going, hey, this thing that was horrible, it was so bad that it went away. Yeah, I'm gonna grab that and just bring it in,
That'd
just
be bad.
cause, and that would be fun, and.
That would cause a lot of damage.
Yeah,
We
that's it.
definitely don't want to do
So
that.
it gets healed first in the
Mhm.
process and then put into you.
Yeah.
And so because it's a healed piece, the festering wound would also get better in theory.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now I understand.
exactly. Yeah,
All right.
every time with the process, and that's what we're going to get to in a little bit, but through the process, healing the soul piece, rewriting the song, the soul contract, which is a
Okay.
really cool thing, and then going through a chamber of grace where the soul piece is healed and turned into this beautiful radiant self, and then we come to the part where the soul piece brings back treasures for you too, because the soul piece is always going to have gifts.
Gotta loves gifts.
Exactly, yeah, and those bring back the lessons and the healing so that it can come into this beautiful thing within you, this beautiful healing of wholeness. So you're not just getting that part of you that was missing back whole, but you're getting the gifts and the lessons and the healing and the strength that come from.
A healed situation that was the original thing that made it go away.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to touch on with needing a soul, with having a soul loss, is sometimes when people go into a coma, and we've had a lot of people go into a coma lately with COVID.
I mean,
But when somebody is in a coma, more of their soul is outside of their body than is inside their body, because the soul is trying to decide, am I ready to just transition, or do I want to come back and make a go of it again in this body? And it's kind of wavering between seeing the other side, coming back in, and that's why sometimes it's so hard once somebody is, that you sometimes will see where the body is ready to be awake, and it takes several days for them to wake up, and it's a slow, arduous process
It's because
sometimes.
the soul is still debating.
Exactly, the body might be
Oh.
fine to work on its own, but the soul's going, I'm not so sure.
So,
And in that process, you get soul loss, because part of the soul is seeing how great it can be on the other side, and not sure maybe that it's wanting to come in. And part of that soul loss is also to help take away the memories of all the trauma that has happened. If somebody's in a coma, they've been through a lot. It's a big trauma, and all of the things that have
Just
happened
getting
in the
there.
hospital. Just getting there, and then on top of it, everything that's happened in the hospital
Yeah.
to try to keep them alive
Yeah.
and to revive the system.
That's
The
traumatic.
soul takes all of that, or a lot of that
Yeah.
trauma with it and flees, and then the rest of the soul comes in. But the soul retrieval is so important after the coma to bring the wholeness.
So are there, so you can't guarantee just a random good or bad situation is gonna guarantee soul loss necessarily. But
Right.
so a coma, you pretty much,
Very likely.
usually there's are there other things you can think of, like where
Yeah,
you
any
would
intense-
normally have?
Any intense trauma, if there's spousal abuse, like severe spousal abuse, or child abuse, or if there's a severe illness, something where you're just not sure if you want to be here in this world anymore, severe
situations occur.
car accident, any severe trauma, most likely there's some soul loss that
Some sort
happen.
of okay.
And that's what helps you get through,
Nice.
so you can survive it. You have to retrieve the soul later.
Gotcha. And you, of course, everybody has had something probably happen, if not in this life, in previous life.
Exactly.
Okay,
And
interesting.
sometimes it's also a traumatic death in a past life too. There was a soul
Oh, I can
retrieval
see.
I did, actually
Makes
2 soul
sense.
retrievals I did over the last week, where with different people where they had died. One was 4 years old, the other one was like 7 or 12 years old, I don't remember.
Okay.
But they felt a lot of guilt because of seeing the pain that happened with their families afterwards. Both of these soul pieces were where the child had actually caused injury to themselves inadvertently. One fell into a well, the other one had been running with a sharpened object and accidentally fell, tripped over a rock, and it really gutted into their left side, and that was a really long death.
Running with scissors was funny until you said that part.
Sorry.
I was like, I'm laughing because I'm like running with scissors. That's hilarious. And then they died from it, and then it's not funny. Sorry.
That's okay. And that was a really long, painful process. And so they were really dealing with feeling guilt over the younger baby that was in the household, which was part of why they had decided to run away doing what they knew they shouldn't do, but they never meant to cause long-term harm to their family. So they wrote some things into their soul contract that lasted over many lives, that then derailed them from being able to achieve their full purpose and to get their greatest destiny.
And what were their issues in this life?
There was a lot that was pertaining to fear and to trust were big parts of it. Trust, not feeling like they could make mistakes. They felt like because they had made this mistake.
Like the worst mistake is that you die from it. And then they saw the family that caused, so, okay, so because they were afraid of making mistakes, they wouldn't trust the people, so that carries over into the next life where they're like, I'm not gonna make any mistakes ever. And then if they're not gonna make any mistakes, that means they also can't trust people because
they don't want to, she didn't want to bring people close to her.
Well, and your decision, but I mean, it's also about, I mean, if you refuse to make any mistakes in your life, you're not allowed to make a mistake. Taking other people's possibly wrong points of view and then making a decision on that means that you can't do that.
That's true.
And that shows, that's where trust comes in. And if you can't trust people, you can't get close to them.
Right.
And so that one simple thing of needing to always make the right decision would isolate them in this life.
Exactly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was just that extreme critical voice within of I just can't make a mistake. I just can't. I have to be perfect, and nobody can be perfect.
And of course, you don't.
Our imperfections make us perfect.
And of course, when you're born with it, you don't know why.
The strong
It
drive.
has to be. You have to be perfect.
Exactly.
You don't understand it.
Exactly, and then as you age, then that gets even stronger and more imprinted of that drive to not make mistakes. And of course, you have to make mistakes because it's what we do. So then that voice becomes very critical, and then you're not loving yourself as much anymore. You're no longer accepting yourself. You don't approve of who you are, and that makes it really hard, again, even with that, to form relationships because you feel like you're not worthy.
You're always so down on yourself all the time.
Exactly.
That's the only way, is you have to be hypercritical of everything.
And all because so long ago, as a 4-year-old,
one mistake.
You made one mistake.
And then you
caused
said,
some pain.
I'm never
gonna
do that again.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so that's something that can be healed beautifully through soul retrieval.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then those
those
drive.
effects. Yeah.
Yeah, then that ripple effect of so
many
much.
aspects.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So that one mistake, I mean, it wasn't a little mistake, but one mistake in a previous life, and then it could scar you for many lifetimes if you don't fix it.
Yeah, and then once you fix it, you can get back on track with your destiny and flow forward and embrace the love more and accepting.
So how do you fix it?
So that I think we're going to have to get into next week. I think we're running a little close on time here.
We're kind of full on
let me just check here to see if there's something else I wanted to mention this week. The other...
Is that Japanese?
Yeah, my writing looks like
it does, honestly.
Actually,
she has horrible handwriting.
Even this part I think we're going to start with next week. I was going to say because this is really kind of an exciing part, but
we'll start on
let's start that next week. So we're going to keep you guys waiting, but tune in next Sunday at 9:30 and Eastern Time, and we will be posting this on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page at Earth and Sky Center, facebook.com/Earth and Sky Center, YouTube Earth and Sky Center, and we will appreciate seeing you next week. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button to get notifications, and it'll let you know when we post the video next week. Thank you so much.